Well, hello, everyone, and hello to you, Laura. We were just chatting before the show, and I really enjoyed chatting with Laura, but we haven't done this in so long. So thank you so much for coming on with me this afternoon or evening, wherever you might be watching from, to talk about those pesky food labels.
Yep. Thank you for having me on here. And I think this is an important thing to do because the advertising is purposely deceptive. So I think it's good to be able to go, this is really what that says.
I love how you called it advertising, because that was a thought I had in my mind as well. Before we get started, I wanted to shout out a few comments we already have. So thank you so much, Renee. I believe she became a member of your channel, Laura. So that is fabulous.
Yes,
and yeah, Cat Diamond is here saying, hello, ladies.
Yes.
You are on the same time as Anita, but you won. Oh, yeah, I totally forgot
Aw.
this is her time slot, but so glad you guys chose to be with us. Hi, Josephine. As always, nice to see you. And we have Dawn here. Hello, Dawn. And Bruce. Hey, Bruce, how you doing?
He's like, hey, it's earlier.
All right. Well, I just want to jump right in because I did get a request on my channel to do a class on reading labels. And so this isn't really the back of the label where the calories. I used to always look at those calories, and the fat and protein. We're not talking about that today, but we are talking about the advertising that companies and even sometimes backed up by organizations put on their food, or maybe I'll say food-like substances, to get people, to buy them because, then they're quote unquote healthy. And I know in the past, I definitely fell for some of these advertisements. And so I'm just going to start bringing them up here. And if you guys in the comments have anything to say, feel free to let us know. But this is the first one. So this whole grain, this one says 15 grams or more per serving, and it even tells you to eat 48 grams or more of whole grains daily. What do you think about this whole grains thing?
Yeah. So when it comes to the whole grains, I mean, all of it's going to come back to you really don't need any grains at all. You don't have to. I mean, if you're keto, you can do some of that, but you really don't. We don't require any carbohydrates. So, really, and they know that. They know that it is, the only thing that you really have to have, you have to have the fat and you have to have protein. You do not have to have these. So, that's part of their deceptiveness is just the way they twist words. And, they have people in these corporations that this is what they went to college to do. I mean, you've got your food additive specialists, you've got your people that know how to word things a certain way to get you drawn in. They put, pretty colors. Green check mark is my favorite. I love the green check mark because for so many years I was like, oh, it has a green check mark, therefore it must be good. It's not. And even I don't know if you fell for this, but when I was keto, I fell for you can take, the fiber content away from the carbohydrate, and that's actually the carbs that you're getting. That is, I mean, it slows down how fast it turns into it, but it does not diminish, the amount that you get. It just slows down how quickly you get it. So people with like CGMs, they're still going to see those spikes. It may not be quite as fast, but they're still going to go just as high as they would have.
I totally did the subtracting fiber thing at the beginning. That's all I was hearing about. The first time when I did, I guess Atkins, is kind of what I was doing, although I never read the book. But yes, when the very first time I ever started counting carbs, that's all I knew was net carb, like count the net carbs. I thought that was the correct way to do it. Until I learned later. The other thing about whole grains is before I knew about even low carb, it was like, oh, those whole grains are supposed to be healthier. So if it's a whole grain, it's good for you, as opposed to one that's been crushed and, the kernel or whatever it is removed from it. Somehow that makes the carbohydrate, magical or something. But that and the fact that the bottom of that food pyramid, and yes, I know it's my plate, but I grew up with the pyramid, is all of
Me
those
too.
grains, and it's supposed to be healthy to put that at the base of your diet. But as you said, if carbohydrates are 100% not essential, then why are we building the foundation of our diet on that?
Yeah,
So
especially 7 to 11 servings is what it was for most of our lifetime, was 7 to 11 servings. And I'm like, there is no way. And even if we want to talk about my plate, that when I go into a diabetic's house and they're like, oh, here the hospital handed me this and it's the my plate and it goes through, and I'm like, if you eat if you eat oatmeal with brown sugar, a banana, and 4 to 6 ounces of orange juice, if you're not diabetic, you will become diabetic. And if you already are one, get ready to use more insulin, because I'm just like, I cannot even believe that that is a recommended breakfast for a diabetic, but it is.
So I am not diabetic, but when I was in the hospital the few times, like I gave birth a couple of times and I had a surgery, that's what they fed me for breakfast. And that was before, and I ate it. That was before any of this stuff. If I'd have known better, I would have had my husband bring me something. But yeah, it literally was what you just said. The oatmeal with the brown sugar, some kind of juice. I don't remember if it was apple or orange juice, but definitely some kind of juice, toast with some seed oil spread. That was what and there wasn't an option. Like, it wasn't a menu I could pick from. It was like, here's your tray and this is what we're giving you. So, okay. So this one, I'm actually going to bring up, I have some text first and then I'll show what there's different ways it can look, but this is what I asked Google, and the AI said this about the heart healthy. So it says, and you're talking about the check mark, right? The heart check mark is a symbol that indicates a food product meets the American Heart Association's criteria for a heart healthy diet. It's a simple way to identify foods that align with the AHA's recommendations for an overall healthy eating pattern. Look for the AHA name to be sure the claim is from the American Heart Association. And then we have things like this. So this one doesn't have the check mark, but this is just one example that I found. So it says heart healthy right on it with the heart. And it says to see the side panel for information about the relationship between saturated fat, cholesterol, and heart disease. Because I definitely want to get that information from the side of an oatmeal box.
It's so maddening because it's not true. And it is not based in any kind of science. And they know that, but there again, it all comes down to, this is a marketing scheme. That's just how they do it. It is all marketing to us, and I've said before that we should not have the Food and Drug Administration should not be one entity, because, the food portion of the FDA approves what is deemed safe, all of the nutrients that you need to have in your diet. And then I always say you end up with the metabolic diseases from following the food part of their recommendations. And then you jump into the drug part of theirs, because then you have to take the drugs because you got the metabolic diseases from the foods that they approved. And I'm like, that's a Ponzi scheme.
Right. Absolutely. It's like a big cycle. Once you're sucked in, there's almost no getting out. Not to mention, a lot of those foods are highly addictive. Like the chips, I see my students just sucking down by the bag. They'll bring a family size bag of chips. Every day. I don't know where it goes, but they for sure eat them. And there was one day just like a week ago that I got a delivery because the student had forgotten the chips at home and mom brought them to school. Like, she made an extra trip to school because he could not go the day without his bag of chips. So we're not talking about a lunch. We're talking about a bag of chips.
That's
so yes.
something.
And that, my students are 10 and 11 years old. So it starts early, right? I feel.
That's sad.
Lisa Rich brings up a good point, because we're talking about the grains. Yes, those grains are heavily sprayed with chemicals. A good friend of mine, I was just telling about the glyphosate. She didn't believe me. I'm like, no, it's Roundup. But how could that be? Because Roundup kills. I'm like, no, but it is Roundup though, because they genetically modify the plant to, withstand the onslaught of the Roundup. And
that's why they call it Roundup Ready beans.
Yeah. And so I hope she went and looked it up, but I was like, no, for real. I don't want to be eating that. And you can't wash it off, right? It kind of soaks in. it's not wash
It
offable.
does. Yeah. Now, the one good thing is if you're eating ruminant meats, they do break that down. It does not end up into their fat and their meat, just because of the multi-chambered stomach. So that's a nice thing. They also break down mRNA. So for anybody that's worried about that,
Mm.
they do not. And the one good thing I do know from a doctor I worked with on his complete autopsy he had at Columbia University in Missouri, was that the only organ he did not show multiple amounts of spike protein. He had zero in his stomach. Every other organ was completely full. So,
Mm.
hydrochloric acid, pepsin, something breaks it down, but all I can tell you is it does not end up in their meat. So,
Yeah. So what I've been doing, I mean, I'm a teacher, as I've already said on this broadcast and
yeah,
multiple times.
yeah,
We don't get paid, the big bucks. I have to take my food budget and kind of spread it around accordingly. And so I'm perfectly
yep,
happy eating like a Walmart burger patty. But
sure,
nowadays, when I buy my chicken and my pork, I do try to get like a pasture raised source
yes,
because and
yeah,
especially because my son I eat a lot more beef. He eats a good amount of beef, but a lot of chicken. And since
right.
he's young and it is a pretty big part of his diet. He'll eat that a few times a week. I do get pasture raised chicken because I'm just worried about like all the chicken, even at the health food store where where I
Yep.
do get some of my stuff. It says like vegetarian fed, and I'm like, but they're not
It
vegetarians.
is.
And what vegetables? Like I'm sure it's corn and soy, which just gets
Yep.
into their fat, and then it's not healthy for us
Yep.
to be eating that.
Or gluten. Like in the little town I live in, there's a lady that has chickens and she knows how I eat. So she ran into me and she was like, "You need to tell everybody about my chicken so I can sell eggs." And she does sell them for like 250 a dozen. So that's
Mm.
most people be like, "Hey, that's a good price." And I said, "Yeah, I want to come over and just see how you raise them." And so they're outside, but they're in a mud pit. It's like there's no grass, there's no
Mm.
worms, it's just been ran down. And then there was these huge 100-pound bags sitting out next to the stable like thing. And I said, "What is that?" I was hoping it was like cracked corn, if at the that's the least of the worst. And it is 100-pound bags of gluten that she gets from a factory just across the river here because it's a corn
Mm.
factory. And so that's a byproduct that they don't really use enough of it because everybody went gluten free. So now they're like, "Oh, what do we do with all this extra gluten?" So that's what she feeds them 24
Wow.
hours a day, and I'm like, and she goes, "Do you want any?" And I said, "No, no." And she
Yeah.
goes, "Well, why not?" And I said, "I can't have gluten." And think about these kids that have gluten intolerances. I said, "No, I have never sent one person her direction." No.
Yeah, when I interviewed one of my first interviews I did, in fact, it was before I had microphones, and the chickens were quite vocal because I didn't have even
Yeah.
a microphone when I went there. But it was an egg farmer, and she was getting sick from like eating the store bought eggs, and so that's how they started their business. And their
Smart.
chickens are pasture raised. They move them around the
Sure.
field where they are, so that they're not just running
Smart.
down that same area. And then I forget now,
Sure.
I mean, it's been over a year, but the stuff that they did supplement their diet with was not gluten. It was definitely, and
Yeah.
so it was to where she could, it was
Yeah.
for her own health. And then now they,
Smart.
sell their eggs. So
Yeah.
on a similar note, Journey to Health is saying, where do you get your chicken, from a butcher or grocery store? So I order my chicken from Wild Pastures. I just have it delivered to my house. Chicken and pork I get from there, just because it's pasture raised. And then they're saying wanted to look into it as well because apparently the linoleic acid is 3 times from a factory chicken or pig to a wild chicken
Yep.
or pig. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. Omega
So
6 is way higher ratio. And I don't eat any chicken, turkey, or pork. So I just eat ruminant animals. I do the lion version of carnivore because
mm,
it's been over 3 years. It's where I feel my best. And every time I try to go back and eat something like that, I end up with histamine issues immediately. So it's not worth it to me. There's plenty of other ruminant animals out there.
yeah, I find that I eat more and more beef the longer that I'm on this. I will still have like some bacon and eggs. So
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's really the only pork I eat. And then sometimes when I make my son his chicken, maybe every fourth or fifth time, I'll have a couple chicken thighs, but it's super rare because
Right.
I crave the beef, especially picanha being my favorite cut, or even just burger patties. And I never get sick of it. So yeah. All right, I'm going to bring up the next one, which is, this was one in the 80s and the 90s that I was all about this
Low
label.
fat,
Yes. So the
fat-free and
fat-free
low fat.
or low fat, right? And I would
Mhm.
go for that. If it was like yogurt, I would for sure go for the fat-free. And then when the fat-free Greek yogurt came out, that was a craze because it was like, it's still thick because it's Greek yogurt, but it's fat-free. And
That's right. It's so
but
healthy for you.
I wish I would have gotten the ingredients because I can guarantee you the ingredient list on this is a chemical soup.
Well,
But I would like to hear what
not
you
only
think
is it
about it.
yeah, so not only is it a chemical soup, but if you remembered, like, when you would turn that around and look at it, the sugar content was sky high because
Oh.
if you take the fat out of it so that, it's healthy, you have to make it taste decent, so they would add more sugar to it. So what it did was the people, and I was one of them, doing this low fat type of, lifestyle, because even though I was keto in the 90s, I was the lower fat version of it. It was, more of the vegetables. It was more low fat than what I ended up switching to later. But that keeps you addicted, as having that sugar draw. And then it hits that pleasure center of the brain. And it's like, I need that. Because I really, and maybe there's somebody on here, but I have never met anybody that goes out to their garden, grabs a head of lettuce and chews on it. I've
Mm-mm.
never seen it. You're gonna cover it with something that makes it taste a little better. And to me, it's like that's the whole reason I don't eat duck. If I have to cook something, no offense to Rick, but if I had like my grandma would cook it for like 3 days to make it edible, and I'm like, I don't wanna spend that kind of time. Now, I think he's got good ways that he does his, and maybe I could try that, but not for me, not that much time. So, yeah, the other thing was, like I said, they just really played into that diet mentality that they had trained us over the years. Um, I talked with somebody yesterday, and she said that she started out at like 125 pounds. I think she's 5'8" as a very young 20, 21. But the new Jordache commercial was on TV, and that girl weighed about maybe 90 pounds. And so she said that started her, oh, yeah, I'm fat. And she went down that, years of the low fat and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think if you look at people that are in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, you will notice so many of them have thyroid trouble. They've had menstrual trouble. Men have had low testosterone, and I'm like, it's because of the low fat. I mean, we didn't have the cholesterol we needed to start these hormones and to heal and do the things that we needed to do for our bodies. So, yeah, they've done a good job, but we are trying to turn this page and make everybody healthier.
Yeah, I don't fortunately never had the menstrual trouble, but I've had thyroid trouble my whole life. Little did
Mhm.
I didn't know that diet and health were connected. That sounds absolutely crazy to me now, right?
Yeah.
Had no idea. It was like I ate so I could have like low calories and try not to get fat, or I had like
Mhm.
binging issues. And then like the health was like that you go to the doctor, and it was two
Yeah.
totally like separate things in my mind. I never connected them.
Yeah.
But yes, I know that feeling of looking at whatever you said, Jordache commercial, but whatever it might be, magazine, whatever, and thinking I'm fat, so now I need to starve myself and eat everything fat free and don't eat anything with over a certain amount of fat grams. I had a friend of mine tell me that, like, flip over the label. If it has more than 5 grams of fat, don't eat it. I can remember
Mm.
hearing things like
Yeah.
that. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so let's see. Oh, this one. So natural flavors. So this one is
Yeah.
supposed to be like a quote unquote healthy juice. That's why I picked it. And you look at, first of all, that's like a sugar bomb and an insulin raising. I mean, just look at those ingredients. But then at the end, it's natural flavors. And what I know about that is they can pretty much hide a lot of things in there, and it's not always natural. So, can you tell us about
Yeah.
those?
Sure. So, again, this was intentionally made very vague. and misleading. And they did that. I mean, they knew what they were doing. But the FDA guidelines and definitions for natural flavors as ingredients derived from plants or animal sources that are processed or extracted to enhance taste. However, many of these also are chemical compositions to become like the flavor that they're wanting to do. So, like strawberry jam right now, if you go look at the Smuckers, the amount of real strawberry that's in it is so teeny tiny, but it has all this chemical additives in there, and it's like, oh, it's like, well, that's how they come up with their flavor. So, and the other thing is too, anytime if you think about single ingredient or even 2 or 3 ingredient foods, that's going to be natural. But there they use that word natural because they know that, oh, you're going to think that it's whole and that it's better for you. But if you look at the ones that most of the ones that have that on their label, when you turn it over, they've got 10, 12, 30, 40, you know. There was one the other day, my husband was looking at box cake mixes in Walmart.
Yeah.
And he grabbed one and we go walking down the aisle. And normally I'm a pain in the butt to take shopping because I don't buy my food there. And so I'll read the ingredients out loud as we're walking down the aisles for my enjoyment and entertainment, and then for the other people to hear it, you know. And but this time he started reading it and he was like, this cake mix has ethylene glycol in it. And I said, and you know, he worked at a car parts store for years. And I said, isn't that the antifreeze for RVs? And he goes, yeah. And I go, so he went back to the aisle and we looked through every single one of them, and every one of them had it. And it said natural flavors, but it was
Wow.
ethylene. Yeah.
So I do buy some food at Walmart, but I stopped buying. The only meat I buy from there is my picanha. Sorry, Bruce. I know the picanha banner is like in the Lioness Lifestyle Live Studio, and if I try to pull it
Yeah.
over, I'll have to add it to my studio later. Anyways, picanha, you can envision it there. That one is it's an Angus picanha, and it's one ingredient, and it just says beef, right? And also the frozen burger patties just say beef, but I had been buying ground beef from there, and I had been buying chuck roast from there. And lo and behold, you flip those things over and it says beef and natural flavors. What the heck, Walmart?
Yep. They've injected.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I stopped buying those from there. And when my husband or older son go to buy stuff at a different grocery store, I'll say, "Can you get me a 3-pound thing of ground beef or a chuck roast?" Because it's crazy to me that you can't even trust the beef anymore. You got to flip that label.
Yep. You still have to look.
So I wanted to point out that Renee is here. Hi, Renee. We shouted you out earlier. Thank you for becoming a member of, I believe, Laura's channel. That's fantastic. Now that you're here, we can thank you personally. Okay, so I've got the next one I ate so many of these. Because they're sugar free. No. I know. Oh, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one. I'm like outing myself here. But yeah, back in the day, no sugar added in popsicles or fudge pops or anything like that. I just thought that has to be healthy because no sugar added. That's got to be good for you.
Yeah. So the way they got around that is they just added high natural sugar content stuff to it. That's how they would do that. So like, let's say it's a milk-based product. They would actually have lactose that they have, excreted from the other and add that into it, which would bump up the sugar content, but it's not added because it's part of the milk that's already in there. So that's how they get around it. So a lot of this comes down to the regulations. And I'm not a big fan of having something regulated to death, but there are a few things that it's like maybe they have to have some regulations until they learn to quit being evil people. The other thing was a lot of them used fruit juices as their sweetener. And as we know, the fruits have been hijacked. They've been, genetically modified. And the other thing is they hide stuff in there like maltodextrin. And maltodextrin for most people acts just like a sugar. It will spike their sugar. It'll cause an insulin, spike the entire thing. So yeah, I'm trying to think what were they. Oh, the other ones that they did a lot back then was like Splenda. They would have like Splenda added, and there again, it's a sugar alcohol, so you didn't have to count those sugars.
Mhm.
But now we know that not everybody, but the majority of people, what they take in those sugar alcohols, they still get a spike. So it
Yeah,
was
and
not sugar free.
you mentioned the fruit juice. It's my understanding that fruit juice is particularly bad because it basically all the fiber has been taken out and it's just like liquid fructose. And fructose
Yes,
just goes and attacks your liver because your liver is the only part in your body that can process fructose. So like glucose,
correct.
all of your cells, glucose can go into all of your cells. Correct me if I'm wrong anytime, Nurse Laura. She's a nurse, I'm a teacher,
Yeah,
so she's the health
yeah.
expert here. Um, but fructose, only the liver can process that, and too much fructose can lead to fatty liver and things like that. So it's making, I always feel so guilty about the amount of fruit juice I gave my kids when they were little because I
Oh, I
thought that,
know.
that it was healthy for them.
Yep. Yeah, me too. Yeah, the sad thing is it's so high in fructose, and they've genetically modified it to make, be sweeter and have more fructose than the
Mm,
apples when we were little kids were this big. And now
yes.
you can get a gala apple. I mean, it's as big as your head,
Yes.
and it's super sweet. But yeah, it's pretty sad. But I did the same thing. But the way the body does that is exactly like you said. It mainlines right to the liver, and it's basically broke down and is seen by the liver just like alcohol. Same exact thing, which is why we're seeing these younger children getting fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and we've never seen that before. That never was there. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, there was a few conditions in families that they might get it, but it was usually in their 50s or 60s. It was most often men. And then the alcoholic fatty liver disease, of course, was mostly men, but women were catching up, and it would hit them in their 60s and 70s usually. So yeah, and it's something that is so easily fixable. I've worked with several clients on my website that have fatty liver that, I mean, when you look at their scan, it looks like cauliflower is growing off of all the lobes of it. And within 3 months of going carnivore, even if some of them plan to go back to like a keto or ketovore, we still go so many months carnivore first and then start adding things to see what works with them. But you would see their next scan and it'd be completely smooth. And it's just like amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's what I've heard is that the liver can be so resilient. If you just stop
Yeah.
poisoning it,
Poisoning. Yeah. Yeah.
it will tend
Yep.
to come back, quickly.
Hmm.
I wanted to put this up from Ricky. He's like, "Oh no, I get boxes of beef patties from Walmart. Now I got to go check the box in the freezer." I don't get those boxed ones. I don't know what's in there, but I haven't ever seen the burger patties. It's the ground beef, like in the chub or even in the
Hmm.
tray. And the same thing
Yep.
with the chuck roast. I was shocked because to me, a chuck roast is like a slab of meat that you should just cut off the chuck.
That's
No,
it.
there's natural flavors in that chuck roast. That was even more shocking to me than the ground beef. Those were the two things that I found Ricky Lee. So hopefully, yes, go read your box. But hopefully it's not in there. I know my Walmart beef patties in the bag is just beef. So hopefully you're okay on that.
I think most of the ones that I've seen there that are frozen, like I know the box that they're talking about, like the Walmart brand, Great Value. I think they're
Mm-hmm.
100%. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen that where it said added, but I haven't looked. And that's the other thing is you get kind of used to, hey, this brand's been great, and I don't have to worry about it. And then you turn it around, you're like, oh no, it's kind of like the apple cider vinegar from Bragg's, used it for years. And then Katy Perry bought it, 2 years ago. And the apples they use are sprayed with Appeal, which is a product that Bill Gates
Mm.
came up with. And I mean, the MSDS sheet that tells you, like, if you get in contact with this Appeal, states right on it that if you handle something even dried, you are to wash your hands underwater for 10 minutes. And you're going to eat that?
Yeah, I don't want to eat that. So I didn't realize that about the app. So is there a better brand? I know a
Yeah,
lot of
white.
carnivores use it in their bone broth. Like when they make their bone broth,
Yes.
they'll add a little apple cider vinegar to it.
Hmm. Yeah. So probably the one that I found that's cleanest is called White House. White House. And it's at Walmart as well.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna look
Yep.
into that
Yep.
because I do have some of the
Yeah.
brag for when I do make. I haven't been making bone broth lately because I haven't bought any ribeyes lately because they haven't been on sale. So
I know
I
it.
haven't had
Like
any
go on
bones.
sale.
I know I haven't had
Yeah.
any bones, but when I do, I tend to put a little of the apple cider vinegar in there.
Yep.
I wasn't
It
aware.
works.
I heard of the appeal, but I didn't know it was in there. Jeez Louise.
Hmm. I know
Um,
it's scary.
it's very scary. Okay. So let me go down and find the next one. So, okay. Oh, this one gets me because we're all about the protein. Carnivore diet, high fat, protein, all good things. But then they go and put something like this on a label: 8 grams, good source of protein.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
wonder what kind of protein it is. Like, what is it's not beef protein.
No, it's probably pea protein, soy protein. It's going to be from a vegetable source and that's what I had somebody that I was working with, and she's like, "Well, I'm not really vegetarian," but she kind of listed her foods, and I'm like, "Yes, you are," because you're eating these
Mhm.
things, and they're all made from these plant products. If you looked at Doritos, that's a vegetarian. It actually is. And I mean, vegetarians will eat that because it is. The thing with the good source of protein, there again, this is where the FDA allows them to put these blank statements out there that really are not true, because that is like 10% of what the daily, value should be of somebody. And I would say that that's even low, but I think that's where they were coming from. But even with that, that is just, yeah. And like we said, it's low quality protein. A lot of it's incomplete. It's not bioavailable. So you have to try to do the conversion if your body can do it. But if you are metabolically already sick, you're not going to be doing that conversion. The other
Mhm.
thing is, look at the serving sizes when they say that. It's like half a pancake or half of the, it's like nobody's eating half a pancake if they're eating those things. They're eating two, three, four,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
and think that they're doing something good for themselves. It's the same thing with like your protein bars, cereals and shakes, that are keto or whatever they want to put on the label. It's absolutely junk. Even whey protein is not necessarily great for everybody. Some people can do like the whey isolates and it doesn't affect them. Other people, they cannot. So the other thing too is, even though it says good source of protein, almost always, if you look, they have added sugar put into them to help with the flavor, because most of those things that say good source of protein also say, low fat, or they allude to being low fat. And when they say low fat, that is saturated fat. But when you look at the back, it's like trans fats, which is absolutely, I mean, just common sense tells you, if you think about it. In the 70s, the consumption of red meat and fats started to drop, and it has dropped every year, I think, until this year. I think we're starting to bounce it back the other direction finally. But heart disease and stroke is still number one and two and just keeps climbing. So if saturated fat is the issue, why didn't those numbers ever drop? They never slowed down. They have been on a constant up.
Yeah, and if everyone has a statin deficiency, there's millions of people on statins. So why are we still having all the heart attacks? I mean, a lot of
Yep.
people I know are on a statin, like a lot
Oh,
of people. Hmm.
every patient I run into, every human I run into, they're like, excuse me, they're like, I take a statin. And I'm like, and I don't have a poker face, so I should wear something like this because my eyebrows give me away. And then they're like, "What?" And I'm just like, "I would not give my ex-husband a statin." And they're like, "Oh." And I'm like, "I'm not kidding." And I'm like, "I really would not pee on him if he was on fire." So that means something, And they're like,
Yes.
"Oh." And I'm like, and then I just kind of little bits of, this is what cholesterol does in your body. And so many of the people I work with in the area that I live are church going people, and I'm like, God made your body. He made your liver. It makes up to 85% of the cholesterol in your body at all times, not comparable to like what you eat, if you get more than what your body needs, it's going out. And we all have been there and done that. So, but I'm like, would God make an organ that's going to kill us? It's not going to happen, So I kind
Right.
of get on my soapbox.
Absolutely. Well, I have a kind of a thing about that because, my dad in the 80s, that's where his health started to decline. He started to put on the weight. He probably had fatty liver. He went on a statin because they were just kind of gaining
Sure.
popularity. I don't know how long he was on it because
Mhm.
I was a kid, but I know he was on one, and he ended up with type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's, which is what he eventually died
Absolutely.
from. And I think that that's
Yep.
a couple of the main side effects. And so ever since I learned
Yes.
about that, I'm just like, dang it, because it got him. And now I know so
Yeah.
many of other relatives and work associates and so many people just taking them. I want to go
Yeah.
back because you said pea protein, and I want to go
Mhm.
back to that. I see pea protein everywhere, and I've had even people argue to me the value and benefits of pea protein, let's say in a protein shake specifically. The
Yeah.
last I checked, peas are not like high, like you have to crush up so many peas, I think, right? To get any
You
protein out
do.
of them. They're not
Teeny tiny.
supposed.
Yep. And it's not available.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thoughts as well. And then we were talking
Yeah.
about whey, and we got a question here. What do you think about beef whey? So whey is milk protein, right? And I've seen like
Yep.
grass-fed whey. So I'm assuming that's from
Right.
milk coming from grass-fed cows.
Yes.
Do
Yeah.
you have
I
thought?
mean, what I tell people with that is you have to try it yourself and see how it affects you. But you have to have a clean slate to know how it's affecting you. So that's where I
Mm,
tell people you want to be carnivore, you want to be clean as possible, and then try that and then see if you have any effects. And the thing is sometimes you may not have that effect the first time you drink it or whatever. If you're doing like the shakes, do it for a week or two and then see like, hey, okay, did I have this, certain things come up. um but it's not bioavailable. It's more bioavailable than the pea protein, I will promise you that. So it's just going to depend on your each individual person. So, but if I was going to pick one, it's definitely going to be the beef whey. I wouldn't touch the pea protein. That's just laughable to me. The amount of peas, like if you went out, like we plant peas for my husband because he still eats the green stuff, but the amount of peas that you would have to eat, comparable to one bite of hamburger, is just, you couldn't plant enough of them. You just
right.
couldn't.
It just
Yeah.
seems silly to pull protein from a source like that, because how
Yeah,
could
we're
that
trying to save
be?
the planet.
Right. And then the same person brought up a good point. I do too. I see that pea protein in a lot of pet foods too. Yeah, so do I.
Uh, that's why if you can at all afford it, I would try to not feed them anything from a package like dog food if you could possibly do it at all.
Yeah. So I have done a lot of interviews now, you included, talking about
Mhm.
how a lot of people were keto first, and so was I. But I feel very, very fortunate that when I got into keto, within the first week or two, I had heard about Dr. Berry. And so I knew about like meat based keto, and it's like meat and veg, and don't fall for
Nice.
the keto products, right? Like keto tortillas are not a thing. It's a marketing kind of scheme. But so many people
Yep.
I know that are now carnivore, part of it is because they were keto and then they got sucked down the keto product rabbit hole. Yeah, so you're like me, I
Yep.
was one of those. I probably
That
would
was
have
me.
too. Like had I not heard, just all of that just sort of came together at the right time for me personally. But like I said, I had done it in the past with the net carb thing. Even though there
Yep.
weren't a lot of keto products, but at that time, but I was
Right.
definitely counting like net carbs. So I know I would have been like, oh, give me the keto tortilla or whatever, had I not known better. But I just wanted to pull
Mhm.
up, here's an example. So it's like low carb sliced multi-grain
Mhm.
bread. So multi-grains, but yet it's low carb and keto friendly. 1.8 grams of carbs per slice. And I'm pretty sure that's going to be net carbs. And they don't even say that. So what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that is that's where they're doing deceptive things by adding in hidden carbs. So that's where they add in like your maltodextrin. You'll see tapioca fiber, soluble corn fiber, chicory root fiber, and those will spike your blood sugar. So you might as
Mm.
well just really, you might as well just go eat the bread, the regular bread, if you're going to do that. I mean, I'm not going to pay $7 for that loaf of bread when you're just getting the same junk, basically. You might as well go buy the $2, $3 loaf of bread, whatever a loaf of bread costs. And that's what I just, yeah. The other thing
Mm.
is they hide a lot of these junk ingredients. They hide seed oils in there, artificial sweeteners like maltitol, you know, these, yeah, and fillers. So they do a lot of fillers because they like to bulk it up, which they do that in all of the foods, that are processed, but I really think they do it a lot with that. The net carbs, like you talked about, where they give you this idea that you subtract, the fiber away from here or the sugar alcohol. And I can absolutely attest to that does not work because the first 26 years that I did keto, it was all single ingredient stuff. It was um, what was in my garden, what we fished, what I hunted. I hunt deer, turkey, stuff like that. But the last 2 years of keto was around, 17, 18, and it was, Quest bars and all these keto things. And even though I should know better, I was like, yes. And I did not read them ingredients. And I can remember the first time I ate a Quest bar and it was like Oreo flavored something.
Mm.
And it was like bing. And it was like I had just taken drugs. And I was like, holy shit. And I can remember grabbing the wrapper back out of the trash can. And of course, the writing was so teeny tiny. I was like, what does this say? I couldn't hardly read it.
Yep.
Um, and so I did like most people at that age. I took a picture of it on my phone and blew it up. And I'm like, it had maltodextrin, it had tapioca, it had what was a guar gum, it had all this stuff. And I thought, that's not really natural. This doesn't make sense. But then it does because they could make it taste the way they wanted to. The other thing too is these things coming in packages, they are super hyper processed. Even if they say multi-grain, whole grain to these companies just means when they started with it, it was a whole grain. It still had the germ, everything else, but they processed it to death. It's been milled and rolled and cooked and baked and even meat, when you cook it, it can be considered processed because you didn't eat it in its natural form. But you're not doing 72 different processes to it either. You're just cooking it and eating it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's pretty
Well,
deceptive.
on top of that, I feel like any bread, like, the keto bread like things like the tortillas and all that stuff, they add a bunch of fiber to it. So
Mhm.
let's talk fiber for just a minute. It's because it bulks it up, like you said. But fiber is indigestible to our gut.
It is.
And I can only
Mhm.
imagine the amount of, like, I just feel like as it went through my intestine, like it would be like scraping and scratching. It just seems like, oh, like I don't want that going through there. I've been fiber free
Yeah.
for a good couple of
Long time.
years now. And yeah,
Yeah.
2 years. I can't believe it's been 2 years.
Yeah. Yay.
I know, right? I feel great. I don't have digestive issues. Yes, there was like a 3 week period to switch over.
Sure.
But it's like I sure don't miss. Oh, I think I need some fiber today. Like I never have
Yeah.
that thought. I have the thought of I
No.
need some fat. Maybe I'll eat some butter, or picanha sure
Yep.
sounds good, or bacon and egg. Like I
Yeah.
hadn't had bacon in a long time, and I had a bacon craving. I talked about it in my last grocery haul that I did last weekend, and I bought a pack of bacon, and
Yeah.
it was delicious.
Good.
So
Yeah.
those are the kind of things my body asks for, but it sure doesn't
Right.
say, I think you need to eat a bunch of fiber. And especially to me,
Yeah.
that's so contrived. Like at least if you have an avocado, at least that's like
Right.
grown on a tree. This is
Right.
like fiber from a factory. Like my
Mhm.
dad used to take that Metamucil stuff like that. It
Yes.
reminds me of that. Like why?
Well, because they're told that they need to add bulk to their stool and that's going to help. But just thinking about how the colon and all the intestines work, if you've got something in there and it's somewhat stuck, do you really want to clamp it down with a bunch of other stuff that doesn't break down? And like you said, it's like a Brillo pad going down through there. Um, it doesn't make sense, but that's what they tell people, and they get used to doing that. And when you tell people, I'll see a Metamucil container, and I'm like, oh, and they're like, no, and I'm like, yeah, you don't need it. And there's a time to transition off of it. It's hard for some people, but I'm like that. You definitely need to do that. But yeah, they put the fiber in there because they know that it's going to keep you full longer because you can't break down the insoluble fiber. And that's what they're using. They're not using something that's soluble. They're using insoluble. So it makes you feel full, but it spikes your sugar anyway at a certain point, and then you're hungry again. It's just like when you go out and eat at a restaurant and you go to a Chinese restaurant. I mean, between the MSGs and all the junk that's in there, it's like you eat these high carb foods, these seed oils, and 2 hours later, you could go eat a whole nother meal because it's like your body, trashed it, it's gone, couldn't use anything from it, and it needs something else. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Karen just posted this going back a little bit, but she does say, thank you for reviewing what happened to Bragg's apple cider vinegar. I knew there was something, but did not know. So yeah, I appreciate that information too, because I wasn't aware of that. Okay, so moving on. Oh, this one just gets me. We all know what this box is. Can help lower cholesterol as part of a heart healthy diet. And there's the beloved check mark. It's not a green one, it's a red one. The American Heart Association certified check mark, because this is going to lower our cholesterol. As far as I know, cholesterol is the basis of all of our hormones. Our brain needs it. I know you touched a little bit on cholesterol before, but I can remember thinking when those commercials came out for that cereal and, oh, this is going to lower the cholesterol. Like, I was sucked in. Oh, that's a good thing. Let's all lower our cholesterol.
Yeah. Yeah. And so basically the reason they do that is because, we all have heard about the flawed cholesterol theory from Ansel Keys and then some others after that. But they use that, and then it reduces heart disease risk, which we all know now that is not true. And this is what's really sad though, is that the study they did last year wasn't even a new study. It just was going over all the information that they had in these first studies and finding that not only was it not true, but the people who did the original studies knew that that was not true. You want to talk about misinformation, that's what it is. So and most foods that they put that label on, where it helps lower cholesterol, those are the fakest of fake foods. If you think about when you look at them, it's like like the Honey Nut Cheerios, that they're like, it has oats. And I'm like, there is nothing that resembles the oat in there anymore. It's just gone,
Yeah.
And with a lot of those, they also add your plant sterols and added fiber to those to help lower your cholesterol. But as a nurse of over 22 years, I can tell you the people, and I have a lady right here in town that's 102, and I can tell you her LDL is over 400. Now, last year, and even probably this year, but last year for sure, doctors would have been like, oh my God. I mean, they tried to put her on a statin when she was in her mid 90s. Why? Why would you put somebody on a statin that maybe if they took it for several years, they might get an additional 4 days of life? But what comes with that is Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, ALS, MS, any diseases of the brain or the myelin sheath, which is the coating that's over your nerves. So kind of like a spark plug wire for anybody out there that remembers what a spark plug wire is. But we get oxidation and we get little notches out of that material around there. And so as the electrical impulse is trying to go through brain or the nerves in your body, it'll shoot out that hole instead of going out the end. So just like a wire in your house, if the coating on the wire gets burnt or gets crimped, that electricity comes out that opening instead of going the way it's supposed to. And then when it goes to a different pathway, then you get plaques, you get protein buildup, you get stuff like that, because it's trying to protect those areas from this electrical impulse. It shouldn't be firing off where it's at. And that's where you see your Alzheimer's. The other thing with that, not to go too far off, is that most every single patient I have ever had any dealings with that had any of those diseases also had taken an acid reducing medication such as omeprazole, pantoprazole, all the zols. And those two in conjunction, just really bad because they both cross the blood-brain barrier, and the brain makes its own cholesterol. It makes its own, but then when that medicine can cross that blood-brain barrier, and then it tells your liver not to produce, and it blocks what you do eat. And then we've seen, I mean, if we haven't seen over the last so many years, it's like, we know what's happening. Everybody's getting sicker and sicker and sicker. Not better.
Yeah, 100%. And so I put this comment up, and I'm going to put it up again because Robin is saying the yellow box is full of poison. Makes me mad just to see it. I agree. And it's because of this. Yeah. Think of the poor kids eating all these sugar boxes. No wonder there's an obesity dilemma in kids. I can picture like in daycares, like that yellow box, that's like a staple. You see kids, I can just picture in a daycare or like a church nursery or something. And they have the high chairs and the little trays. And there they go.
Little boxes.
There, and just picking those things up. And then additionally at my school, they've graduated from those and they move right on to the Lucky Charms and the Fruit Loops. And that's what they're giving them for their healthy breakfast with some non-fat milk.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Which is high lactose.
Yep. And so, no wonder. And I see so many signs. First of all, I've recently had parents straight up telling me my daughter was diagnosed that she's pre-diabetic. So I've had parents straight up tell me, but I also can see the symptoms in, the weight gain, fuzzy skin stuff and skin tags. Dark. Yes. And their neck area. And the skin tags.
Get it around their eyes. Yep.
Yes. And I'm just like, oh, you're like 10 years old. This is not good.
And it's unfortunate that, and not to pick on the WIC program because, the WIC program has helped a lot of people, but it's all geared towards processed stuff. I mean, it's like juicy juice. I'm trying to think. It was like Jif peanut butter, not Smucker's natural that didn't have the added. Not that I would eat that, but like if I had to pick between the two, I'm probably going to do the Smucker's that you have to stir it up because the oil is all separated. But, and there are some things you can get eggs and some cheeses and stuff like that, I think, on the program now. But it was like baby cereal that was like rice baby cereal and oatmeal baby cereal and all this at like 6 months old. And I did that with my daughter. Now, when I had my son 5 years later, I was keto right after I had my daughters when I went into keto. And then 5 years later, when I was pregnant with my son and after I had him, I was like, he's not getting anything other than breast milk. And that's all he had for 16, 17 months. And then he went right on to regular table food. And it was like, we're not doing any of this fake stuff. I also had worked in a food factory and knew what they allowed to be in human consumed food. We had USDA guys walking the floor the whole time.
Wow.
And it would appall people if they knew what could potentially be in some of that processed food. And it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I'm so glad I don't eat that stuff anymore. But I can relate to this comment that Renee says, I used to eat Rice Krispies and corn flakes with a healthy banana and 2 teaspoons, a teaspoon or 2 of sugar. My healthy hubby used to roll his eyes when I put sugar on it while he was eating Raisin Bran. And I'm laughing too. Well, like the laughing emoji, because it's just exactly the same thing, like what we've been talking about. But yes, my mom trying to be healthy, right? She would never have bought me Lucky Charms or any of the, the ones that the Frosted Flakes, right? The cartoon characters. I wanted all that stuff. The tricks are for kids. Like I wanted all that stuff. She would never, because she was a healthy mom, and she would totally buy me Rice Krispies, because that didn't, it wasn't a sugar cereal, right? I can remember being in the cereal aisle and like, please. And she'd be like, no, but here's your Rice Krispies. You can have those. It's the same thing. And yes, with the banana and it's crazy. But yes, I feel you on that, Renee, because I used to do it too. With the non-fat milk, no less. Absolutely. So I think I have one more here, and it is this one. So reduced sodium, simply salted with 30% less sodium. And this is mashed potatoes, but I was looking at labels all morning this morning to pick out some. I mean, they have like meats like this too, like pepperoni, like reduced sodium, like, because we've all been told by our doctors to lower our sodium because it's going to give us high blood pressure.
Yeah. Which is crap. So let me tell you the two things we do to you. If you are in the back of an ambulance and we pick you up and your blood pressure is 60/30 and you're septic or whatever's causing your blood pressure to be low, maybe you're bleeding out. First thing we give you is a bag of 9,000 milligrams of sodium water. That's what normal saline 9% is, 9,000 milligrams. If, let's say, you're on the other end of that spectrum and you are having a stroke and your blood pressure is 210/140, we are giving you 9,000 milligrams of sodium water. And it's like, they know that it's not that, but normal saline is made with mineralized salt. So that's where the difference is. So this is a conversation I have with probably 80% of my clients that I take care of patient-wise for home health. All of them, they have like their swollen ankles all the way from their knees down, just puffy. They have no energy. They're like irregular heartbeat. There's a couple reasons they have that, but I won't go into that one tonight. But they have that. And, one of the best ones is, it was a farmer and he had a bunch of cows out up against like where the driveway is. And he was talking about, I said, you don't use any salt, not even like sea salt or any. And he goes, no, my doctor says I can't. It's been 15 years. So I'm looking at his history of blood pressure medicines, higher doses, another one added, higher doses, higher. And it ends up this guy's on 6 blood pressure medications just to keep his blood pressure to like 150/88, which is still, I'm like, dude. And I just remember sitting at his table and I looked out there and I said, what is that just on the other side of your driveway? And he says, a fence. And I said, yeah, on the other side. And he says, oh, it's a salt and mineral lick. So a big salt lick that looks like a square, it's a cube. And they'll put them out. People put them out for deer. They put them out for whatever. I said, well, why do you put that out for them? And he said to me, well, every one of their cells needs it. And I go, oh, but ours doesn't. And I'm like, and I'm an old gearhead. So I always try to put things in context where a patient will understand it. So I'm like, not only is your heart like a distributor cap, which is where all the electrical components of the older cars used to come from, but I'm like, you have to have those electrolytes in your body or that's not going to function. I said, then when you do drink water, it just goes into the serum part of your blood. It never gets into the cell to become intercellular fluid. And then you're peeing all the time. I said, that's what the junkie salt does. But I go, mineralized salt will not do that after you kind of get your body used to it. And so I have two doctors now in the area that if they have a patient that has the congestive heart failure and all this edema, that they just are like, I gave them your phone number. They need to talk to you because they can't fix it because they're handcuffed, which is their fault. They stay working for some place that has them handcuffed under the Standard of Care Act, that they can't give them any decent advice that maybe they've seen work on somebody else or their grandpa who was also a doctor used this or that. They can't use that stuff. And they have to follow along the lines of what they're being told they have to do, which to me, if I went to school for 12, 13, 14, 15 years, and then I'm reduced to just sitting behind a little computer like this, typing in your symptoms, and the computer program tells me what your diagnosis is, and then the next one tells you this is the medications you start on. Well, the janitor can do that. No offense to any janitors. I love janitors, but I'm like, why go to school for all those years and have, $500,000 or $750,000 in debt when any monkey can sit down and type that into the computer? Like they don't have any medical curiosity either. Like if they see something isn't working, it isn't, well, what else can we do? Can we do, like you say, your diet has something to do with your health. And I have had doctors, my very first doctor that I worked with, that I fired after I lost all my weight going keto, when I told him, because even before I left his office with that script that day, I had driven my 77 Camaro. It had a 327 out of a 68 Corvette motor that I had rebuilt and put in. And I had to run Turbo Blue, which is jet fuel in it. And I remember looking at him and I said, I ate the stuff you told me to eat, the country crock, the egg whites only, the chicken breast, no fat, no skin, nothing with flavor, everything fat free, the ranch dressing fat free, everything. I said, and I keep getting sicker and fatter. My triglycerides were over 1,000. I was 313 pounds and I was 20. And I was eating so-called what they said was supposed to be the diet food. And I said, if that's not working, shouldn't I be putting whole foods in my body? Kind of like the gas I put in my car. I have to run the highest octane I can get for that motor to run efficiently. And he literally said, what you put in your mouth has nothing to do with what your body does. Now I would just like bitch slap him. I really would. I'd be arrested because I'm like, that is the dumbest thing.
Yeah. I had a student with an ankle injury and we went out to recess. He's got his ankle all wrapped up, and we go out to recess and he's going out with his bag of chips. And I said, how is that ankle going to heal? Don't you need to eat some protein? You want your ankle to be made out of chips or do you want it to be made out of protein when your body goes to heal that up? And he kind of looked at me every now and again. It's really at recess I can kind of say these things because then I'm not, instructing them. But yeah, I'll grab a bag of whatever and read it to them. I'm like, did you understand any of that? Because that's just a bunch of chemicals and that's what you're eating. And they're like, ew, and so I'm just hoping, because right now they don't think because they're kids and many of them,
they're
although
invincible.
they think they're invincible and many of them aren't showing the signs yet. They seem thin and healthy from the outside and what have you. Right. But maybe someday when they're, 30, 40, they'll think back to that fifth grade teacher that they had and like, maybe she was onto something. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well,
I think just putting those little seeds in there is a good thing to do. I've had quite a few people that I've talked with recently and they're like, that are carnivore or keto or ketovore. And they're like, well, I just throw this out when we're out someplace. It's like, it's like just a little piece and then let them come. It's like why I wear these kind of shirts,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, just like you, all you could see was vegetarian and you're like, uh-oh.
I was like, what did your shirt say today?
Yeah. And it's like, vegetarians are cool. All I eat are vegetarians. And then it's a picture of vegetarian animals. But it's like, I do that on purpose because that gets people to ask questions. And you would be surprised, that somebody will see something and they'll be like, oh, it's like, so what? I have one that's like a food ingredient label, but it just talks about fat and meat and it gives the percentages and all that kind of stuff. And people will go, oh yeah, it just makes them think a little bit. And I think that's a good place to start because if you try to force, something on they're not going to do it. So
I was at a science training at the district office, at my district office, like 2 weeks ago. And they had us going and look, pretending like we were the students. And we had to look at this website that had to do with the data around climate change and things like that. And I'm like, oh, and I'm telling my people at my table, they all know about my channel and everything. Yeah. I said, they're going to blame the cows. Just watch, it's coming. Here it comes. Just look. Because we were looking at these charts and graphs and whatever. Yep. And so, sure enough, it was like, it had to do with, the cows. One of them, like the causes or whatever. And so I start giving my dissertation on, did you know that back in the day, there was like just as many buffaloes roaming wild on the plains as we have cows today, but like somehow they weren't a problem, but magically today they are. And, I start going on. And And
Sheep.
the lady comes around, and I start talking about how the cows, the cows, they're not eating the food that could be, eaten by a human. Like 90% or something of what we feed the cows is the inedible stuff the humans couldn't eat anyway. So that argument about,
Exactly.
we're taking food that could go to humans and giving it to cows. No, actually not. The cows are
No.
eating it because their rumen can process that stuff,
Yep.
and we can't. And I said, and additionally, all the land, that the cows can graze on land that's hilly. So like we couldn't even plant stuff there if we wanted to. And she's looking at me like I'm nuts. And
That's good.
I said something about I'm a carnivore, and and then she was talking a little bit, and then she goes, "Well, I'm plant-based."
No, so surprised.
Color me shocked, lady.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
technically, she's like my boss's boss, right? Because we're at the district office, but
Yeah.
she walked away, and it was all fine. But I couldn't just let that go. But yeah, she looked at me like I was, wearing my tinfoil
Like, three
hat.
heads.
Like I had three heads. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I love, I was talking to a lady that runs like a seed place where like they and sell plants. So, for like if you want to start your garden or plants or trees or whatever, flowers or whatever. And I was talking about all these greenhouses that she has. And I'm like, greenhouses. And she goes, yeah, because of the greenhouse gas inside there, it promotes better growth for the plants. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is not what they, but, and so I went out there and I just dug and dug and dug. And I was like, shit, sure as shit. Like these people have lost their mind. But the same people that push this are the same ones flying their private jet to Davos so they can decide what the peasant cockroaches get to eat. So I don't care what they say. But even when I was keto and I was more plant-based, it never was with the idea of thinking it's somehow deplorable to shoot an animal or to eat cow. Never, ever have I thought that way. I have worked with people that did start out that way and have, converted over to being carnivore, but I never thought that. I just thought, oh, maybe it's healthier for me based on what we had been educated. So I was just trying to be my healthiest, the low fat, like you say, and all that. But I never was that thumper of save the planet and save, because it's like one burp from a volcano puts out more carbon than we are ever going to put out in our whole existence. So it's like, come on.
Yeah. Well, I'll say one more thing about that day at the district office, and that was within the cow data they were talking about, and we have to grow all the soy to feed the cows, and that's bad for the environment to grow all the soy. I'm like, but you want us to eat soy. Like soy, every soy, soybean oil and soy burgers and soy whatever. How does that make
and we
sense?
can't break it down.
Right.
Not
Right.
not only can we not break it down, but then that high amounts of soy causes it gets into your fat cells, and then those fat cells produce estrogen, which is why you see these little boys running around that are a little chunky, and they've got full on gynecomastia, which is just breast basically. It's because, and their testosterone levels are dropping. And I'm not sure if that's done accidentally or by design, but I have my thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this has just been fantastic. I'm going to have to come up with another reason to invite you on my channel again soon. I always have such a fun time chatting with you. I also want to thank everyone that's been watching. We've had between like 40 and 50 people watching, people come and go. But yeah, this has been really great. Thank you everyone for being so active in the chat.
Yes.
Would you just let us know what's coming up on your channel, or tell us about your products before we sign off? Her products are great, you guys.
Sure.
She has tallow products.
Yes. So tomorrow night's Monday, every Monday at 5:30 on at Healthy Carnivore, I go over, it's mostly diseases that I go over in ways how you got there, things that you can do to prevent it and recover from those things. So that's the majority of what I do every single Monday. And then I work with clients on my website after my work that I do as a nurse, and then come home and do that. I crochet blankets for my patients, my home health patients. When they graduate from home health, they each get a blanket. I usually takes about 2 weeks to do a blanket. So I do that to give to them because most of those people are, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s. And so they appreciate that. I'm not giving a 32-year-old a blanket because they'd be like, thanks, grandma. So I don't do that. They usually get one of my products. So then the rest of my free time is spent making products. So I do make a lot of tallow based products, everything from beard butter for men and shaving cream, deodorant, lotions, shampoo bars. I mean, everything. Yeah, tons of stuff like that. And then I also make natural products because I do believe that there are uses for plants, but I believe they're medicinal. So, like elderberry tincture, dandelion tincture is one of my biggest things out right now because of it helping with diuretic abilities. And also, I haven't seen it with you. Oh, Christy. I was just reading what the
Yeah, I'm a little
conspiracy.
bit of a closet conspirator. Yes, yes. It's in there. It's
I
in
am
there.
not.
I know you're
I'm
just
not.
out there telling it like it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's what I do pretty much every day is that kind of stuff. And then I love to work out. I work out, and then I have Marco Polo group. Myself and Robin Heron, we have Marco Polo groups together. She's got some groups with another gal that she does. And then I do some privately on the side Marco Polo groups where you get that one-on-one every day. You can get your questions answered and just have some accountability of somebody else doing things, whether it be exercise, the way you're eating, different things in the environment. So yeah.
Yes, I agree, Renee. Her tooth powder is amazing. It's
She
Russell
does.
Brands. Russell
Yep.
Brands with a
.com.
Z.com is her
Yep.
website if you want to order, and her prices are super reasonable. I personally love the lip balm, but also the tooth powder is great as well. So
yeah, that's a big deal for Renee because Renee has texture issues.
Oh, yeah, it's a little
Yes, in the
grainy.
mouth. Yep. And so good for you. I'm glad she loves it because I love it. My dentist is even like, and his gals that work in there, his dental hygienists, they buy tooth powder from me. So, and they have for over 2 years now. So yeah.
Wow. Well, that's saying something.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, everyone, have a wonderful evening. I'm going live tomorrow at 4. We will not be, I don't think it'll be at the same time as Laura. So come to me for the pre-show, and then Laura can be the after party. And then, of course, on Tuesday at 5, we've got Lioness Lifestyle Live over there on that channel. We'd love to see all of you there. So until then, good night, everyone.
See ya.